We'd like to start out by thanking our valuable sponsors. Sense of Satisfaction by Cricket is the place for all your fragrance needs. Plus, she's got products to heal what ails your skin and your hair. Shop at scentsbycricket.com. Special thanks to our valued sponsor, John Travis, a financial coach and certified Kingdom advisor with Richard Young Associates, a registered investment advisor. Thanks goes to Anna Patterson, my sister in the Lord who faithfully gives to this ministry every month. And to our newest sponsor, LaToya Gerard of Preach the Word Worldwide Network. She is a valued sponsor and a major encourager regarding this ministry. We need and would love to have you as a sponsor. Absolutely no gift is too small. Please note the info regarding giving throughout and at the end of the show, and help us spread these testimonies around the world. Please note that the views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily the viewpoints of our sponsors. It's time to hear the story, make the connection, learn the lesson, and gain the wisdom. Are you ready? Let's get charged and be changed. The Sister Speak Brother Break Show. Conversations on grace, healing, and deliverance. This is Marcy Bush. Come on, let's journey together. Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Sister Speak Brother Break Show. As I always do, I have a very special guest with me here today. And this is someone, y'all know most times when I have somebody on the show, it's somebody I know personally. Well, this is a young lady that I do not know personally. I actually met her. This is my first time seeing her today, but we met, so to speak, through a mutual acquaintance. Someone who is a giant in the Lord. And she was a connector for us. And I was able to, our guest today is Daffany Nance. And I was able to hear about her story through my sister Artisha's journey. She actually had Daffany on in October. And so we've since connected. And I'm going to allow Daffany to introduce herself. Like I said, she's new to me, but I immediately knew when I heard her story that it was one that I wanted to be able to present to our audience, because I believe that this one is a life changer. I think that it's going to tremendously help some people. So enough of my rambling. Daffany, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Like you said, my name is Daffany Nance, and I'm currently 47 years old, and I am a single mother of 4 children. 3 of my children have mental illness issues, which have stemmed from the other side of the family. 2 of them actually have IEPs. One of them has a 504.
And now tell us what the IEP and the 504 are.
So a 504 is for somebody who has a medical condition and needs assistance to access the general curriculum within the educational system. Okay. So my daughter has an autoimmune disease, and my other 2 children have issues, which is called, or gives them opportunities to an IEP, which is called an individualized educational plan. Mm-hmm. And it actually gives services to a student in order to access the general curriculum. So it gives them extra additional services in the school setting, maybe like occupational therapy or physical therapy, psychological services, extra support within the classroom.
Gotcha.
So those are my 4 lovely children. I am a divorced mother, single mother, and I have been divorced now for, I think, 6 or 7 years. I am not a victim. I am a survivor of domestic violence. Yeah. And they say that many of the victims will go back to their abuser 7 times before they leave. That is what statistics say. I went back once after I left, and that was enough for me. I had enough. And so since then, I actually have received my master's. I went back to school as a single mom, 4 kids, had a 4.0, was named Student of the Year, never expected all that.
Wow.
Worked a full-time job and received my master's, and I am now a special education teacher. I have my own business as a life coach and looking forward to giving hope and success to other women, people, individuals that encounter abuse. It's not okay, no matter who it is, what it is.
Right.
In the process of our marriage as well, during our interview, you will probably hear somewhere along the line there was CPS and the police and other things involved. And, no child should have to suffer those kind of things. They do have lifelong lasting effects.
Mhm.
So I call myself a survivor of domestic violence and many life trials that I never would have expected to live through. But I know with my faith and with the help and support of a great support team that was not my own individualized family, I've made it this far.
Amen. Amen. Whew. So, and I didn't tell the people our main focus, because even when I spoke with Daphne and I told her, okay, so this, I don't know what just happened, but our power went off, Daphne. My power just went off. So everything, can you hear me? So y'all, this may look a little the same, a little different. I know my hair ain't like it was, my makeup ain't like it was. Uh, it was just a few seconds between the last clip and this one, but it's actually been 4 days. Because as soon as we got ready to go in on the first question the other day, we had a 3.5 hour power outage. Not usual for me at all. And we had prayed some specifics about the Prince of the Air. So I guess he got a little more disruptive, but he can't stop nothing. So here we are. And we believe that everything God allows is with purpose in mind. And so right now, we're going to jump right back in with Daphne and begin our conversation. So Daphne, like we were saying, as I spoke with you prior to our recorded conversation, I know that you said there were several different areas that we could have approached, but for this particular area, we are going to address domestic violence. You've told us that you are a domestic violence survivor, and so we do want to hear your story. So, Daphne, even though we are going to hone in on the domestic violence piece, I want to know what your life was like as you were growing up.
Well, I thought it was normal. Coming to look later on in life, I don't think it was as normal as I thought it was.
Okay.
My parents owned a business. We grew up in a very small rural town. And with that being said, we were required to work at the business. And, my day could start from maybe 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and go almost till like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So I
Okay.
learned from a very young age that I worked in order to help our family.
Mm-hmm.
There was capital or corporal punishment, which was in place in our home. And there were expectations. We would get up, we would make breakfast. Those are not things that are of a normal for a child of 6 or 7 years old. We get on the bus, ride for an hour, go to school, come home. And then we were required to work at the business, and then we were required to do chores and things at home. And that required, making a full meal. Nowadays, people put something in the microwave or it's a quick meal.
Right.
That was consisting of like peeling potatoes and husking the corn and, all those 9 yards, or having people stay in our house that might have been associated with the business. And, how things are different for people who have parents that run a business. You're pretty much your whole life is involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
There were times when we were expected to work at the business and making a mistake now learning later in life that that was not an option for us. And my childhood has affected me and affected me as my decisions were made later on in life.
Okay. Okay. And do you feel that any of those, did you see any mirrors of what you ended up going into? The type
Uh,
of relationship?
yes, first of all, when I was probably in high school, I didn't date much. I was pretty much an outcast. And also, my dad had a very strong biasism towards African American men. I did marry outside my race. My
Okay.
family were not happy with that at all.
Okay.
So that was one aspect. The other aspect, and it was nothing against my family, it was just what I appreciated. I was not supported. After I was married, my family basically said, we're good. And then I did see mirrors and I did see red flags before I got married, but I didn't have enough self love in myself to
Mm-hmm.
really know who I was. And I don't think that I was valued enough as a child and given the proper guidance and nutrients in order to know what it means to truly love yourself.
Okay.
And so, yes, my marriage, my previous marriage was definitely, I believe, a reflection of my childhood and not truly having the great opportunities of that nurturing aspect to
Okay.
know who I should be and what I should stand for and what I shouldn't stand for.
Okay. So, how long did you date before you got married?
Well, let's see, I'd say about a year. We were actually expected to get married within 3 months, but my father said no, and he said we should probably go a year. We did go a year. I was actually working for my master's in Oklahoma, and I
Okay.
had 1 year in, I had 1 year to go, and I actually dropped out. So, um, kind of indicative, my mom did actually the same thing. So
Okay.
the cycle of the pattern was repeated.
Okay. Okay. And you said you did see red flags before you got married. Did you
I did
recognize that that it was something that made you go, or only in looking back?
only looking back.
Mm.
One particular moment, well, there was actually two. There was two particular moments. He had his apartment, I had my apartment, and there were times when he would say, because I have a very strong faith backing, and he would say, "Go over to my apartment, figure out the answer, and come back to me. You may or may not be getting married." I don't know what other red flag that could be,
Wow.
but that should be like really something that a typical person would say, something's not right here.
Hmm.
Um, you don't base love on conditional aspects like that, in my own
Right.
opinion. And
Right.
so there were significant red flags. I didn't look at them really from the beginning. I even had friends that said, hey, maybe you should look at things. And I didn't listen because I was just so excited about getting married. I was so in love. And it was pretty much, I felt like the first time that I was truly loved by an individual for
Okay.
who I was. And even then, I don't know that I really knew who I was then.
Okay. Okay. And so family and friend, and maybe for different reasons, but your family didn't necessarily approve of it. Your friends said, take another look, but did they give you, did they just say that, like, maybe you ought to think about it, or did they give you specifics?
Nobody gave me specifics, just more so, the color of the skin was one aspect for more so for my family. My friends weren't really specific. I did have somewhat of a support system, but it wasn't strong friends that you could say, like ride or die. And I
Okay.
think it makes a big difference. And I think that, people who are looking to get married or in relationships and things like that, they really need a strong support system because they know you the best.
Right, right. Okay. So you ended up getting married, and how many years, how long were you married?
I was married for 15 years and
Oh.
then I became divorced. I actually tried to leave once. I left in the middle of the night and went to a shelter, and he convinced me to come back. And I
Mhm.
did go back. Most times, studies show that, we who are abused will go back 7 times. Um, I would say after The last time when he pushed me and I did a death drop, I had enough. And fortunately, I had a bachelor's degree and I had enough intelligence and understanding and knowledge of how to gain resources that I started figuring out a plan. I'm
Uh,
at the year I was out. I was done. I had enough.
okay. So let's go back and let's, after you're married, you're newlyweds, things are going along. As you stepped into the marriage, can you start maybe walking us through what began to happen that gave you concern?
Whew. Well, 3 months later, I became pregnant with my first daughter. And most women, that's like an exciting, joyous, celebratory time for women. And he seemed to grow more distant than celebrating that joy with me. We were involved with the church, and people thought that we actually got pregnant before we got married, although she was born a year later, so that was kind of some complications to it.
Okay.
There was abuse from pretty much the beginning,
Mhm.
more verbal, and then it became more physical. I would say once my daughter was born, the first one, he just like adored her and just like totally devoted all the time to my daughter. When it came to the hospital, I had to have a C-section, and unfortunately, there was no emotional aspect of providing that comfort or that level of care or truly understanding what a woman goes through when
Right.
you have a C-section. I didn't prepare to have one, didn't want to have one. I was in labor for 17 hours and then I had one.
Yeah.
So it pretty much started from the beginning. And then after that, it just kind of went downhill. When I was actually on the operating table and we found out we were having a girl, he actually shook his head and like just put his head down. And I can't tell you what kind of feelings that, I mean, a woman is laying on the operating table to begin with. You mean you're being literally cut up, excuse me. And, your partner is just dropping their head like you wanted a boy more than a girl. There are a lot of people that cannot have children. And we
Right.
should just be grateful for the blessing we had.
Yes. Yes. And you said it started with the verbal abuse. But was he able to like hold that at bay while you were dating? And it just showed up with more contact, in person, close contact.
I would say yes, because we would have to work things like that. We actually worked at the same place. And, there was some distance, but he was very protective. At one point, my mom actually called the police because there were days when I wouldn't contact her
Mm.
and she'd wonder if I was okay or whatever. So I think he was very protective at first and very controlling or like isolating more so. And then the verbal abuse started and then just kind of went further from there.
Okay. And now I think it just struck me as but I think it's a good thing that you said that he was very protective. The reason I think that's good is because that's probably what a lot of people call a thing, is he's just so protective of me. But then you came back and said that it's controlling and isolating. And the connotations to those words are different. It may look the same, but it's according to what glasses you're looking through, what you call it. And
Correct.
so for someone, because like I said, I want this conversation to show people themselves, to help them identify red flags. And so
Correct.
what seems like protective in a case when you really don't need to be protected is really control.
Yes, there was a great bit of isolation in the beginning with my father. Part of the agreement was in order for him to contribute to my wedding, I had to call him every week and to just check in with my father and things of that nature. And my ex-husband was not happy about that, and he really made jokes about it, and just really thought that wasn't appropriate. Um, there's a lot of things we don't like that our parents require us to do, even as adults or young children. But there's a reason to their madness for everything, if you want to put it that way. But there were a lot of things that actually took place. Even when I think back, my mother sent her I believe it was her brother who lived in the area to check on us. He just like showed up unannounced. And my ex-husband was extremely upset because he was there to quote unquote check on me.
Mm-hmm.
And being an adult, I don't think that we need to have that kind of environment, right? If we're
Mm-hmm.
truly doing things the way we should be doing them and correctly, we shouldn't have to have our family worry about us.
Right. Right. And so there was a fear factor that was driving the things that your parents were doing. And I think
Correct.
that too, those of us who see something, even if we can't put our finger on it, I think it's good for us to pray for wisdom with how
Yes.
to approach it. Because if we're simply driven by fear and not by the Holy Spirit, then it could actually have a worse effect. It could have the opposite effect.
It could, only because he became very upset about the
Mm-hmm.
whole situation. He was not happy when these kind of issues occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes he felt that I actually brought it on, and I did not.
Right. And I guess in cases like that, even if, like you said, you did not, even if he didn't show them that he was upset, whether he did or he didn't, once that door closed and they were gone, you had to take it.
Yes, that is correct.
So, you said how, and you said so you had a baby within like right at a year's time.
Correct. She was actually born the 22nd of 2001, and we were married on June 3rd, 2000. So literally, it was like within that year.
Okay. Okay. And so you said he did adore her,
He
but
did.
I guess even in directing his attention totally towards her, then that was further isolating to you than even within the home.
It was very much so, and he was very cautious about who he would let in the house. Even to the fact of like my friends, he wanted to know who my friends were. He wanted to know who I was talking to. I have a very helping spirit. There were times when I wanted to help people, but he told me that I could possibly get sued. It's just very, very fine line. Almost you walk on eggshells is the best way to know how to put it. And as an adult, I don't think anybody should feel like they have to walk on eggshells.
Right.
We've matured and matriculated to a certain point. And if you truly know who you are, then you don't do that.
Right.
And so even my mother and her friend drove out to see my daughter. I believe it was my daughter. Then my son was born shortly thereafter, the next year. One or the other, they drove out. And my ex-husband actually said they were not allowed in, even though they had driven all the way from Pennsylvania.
Mm.
They
And
actually had to
you were
come
living
while he was
where
at
at
work.
that time?
Oh, excuse me.
You were living where at that time?
We were in Oklahoma, so um, they had to actually come while he was at work, so he didn't know that they were actually present.
Wow. Okay. And so when did because tell me what the verbal abuse sounded like.
Oh goodness. Uh, it could be anything from that I hadn't done something correctly as far as like cleaning the house, or I wasn't good enough. Why couldn't I be a better mom? I should be working, I'm not working. It could be anything, basically, excuse me, anything that he felt that wasn't okay or wasn't right, or anything he wanted to find fault with. Instead of any part of it being his fault or both of our fault, it was 100% my fault. And it was
Okay.
100% my responsibility to take care of the children. So if anything happened to the children, even if it was an accident, it was my fault.
Mhm.
So it almost mentally um, handicaps you, is the best way I think I can say it,
Say one
because
more time.
I think it almost mentally handicaps you or
Okay.
disables you, because your mind starts to think, it's almost like when you bang your head against the wall and it starts to hurt. It's kind of the same thing, because, somebody keeps saying to you, you're not good enough. You almost start to think that way. And I just kept praying to God. And I was like, well, what about marriage counseling? Let's do marriage counseling. And
Mhm.
He wasn't interested in marriage counseling, and it just, everything had to reside within the house because we lived in a glass house. And I was constantly reminded we lived in a glass house and nobody could truly know what was going on inside and nobody could see what was actually happening. So when we were on the outside, everything had to look perfect.
Okay. So there's the criticism, berating, and like you said, when you hear that over and over again, you begin to think differently about yourself. And you begin to wonder, well, am I? Even if you don't verbalize it, just hearing that constantly from someone you love, it makes you wonder. And so with him doing the things that he did as he progressed with the verbal abuse, what was the next sort of abuse that you saw enter the picture?
Well, I actually got smart. After my son was born in the second year, I figured out and devised a plan. I guess you could kind of say I was one step ahead, and devised a plan, and I moved us back to the Virginia area. And the only reason I did that was because it was closer to my family. I had a great level of concern.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you've been blessed by today's show, feel free to let us know. And if you'd like to sow into this ministry, become a sponsor, or contact us, you can reach us at 803-221-0169. Or you can email us at the ssbbshow@gmail.com. Let's continue this journey. Missed any of our past episodes?
The pain that I've gone through, I've been through lots. Depression, perversion, low self-esteem, rejection. But I'm here and I'm loving life and I'm changed forever. I'm trying to maim you to leave you physically and mentally maim you. He wanted your life.
I don't think he so much wanted my life is that he wanted some results. He wanted me to stay in the earth and not be who I am now.
Piece where you start talking about it was your love walk.
Yes.
We had an opportunity to not only share our experience, but find out that there were so many women in the room who had similar experiences.
Advice would you give to people who find themselves in the grips of grief right now?
The pain is inevitable, but the suffering is optional.
You were still sick, you still weren't well, but did something change for you when they gave it a name?
Yes, because once they put a label on it, I felt like it was putting a label on me.
Catch up on past shows on my YouTube channel at Marcy Bush, MarceyBush. And be sure to subscribe so you won't miss any future episodes.